Welcome to Ancient Spiritual Knowledge. I'm your host, Zoe Parker. And in today's episode, we enter the realm where the human spirit met the animal world, and where symbols of fur, feather, and scale became more than earthly companions. Across cultures and centuries, animals were never seen as separate from the sacred. They were guardians, guides, and reflections of cosmic power. To walk with the deer, to dream with the serpent, or to call upon the eagle was to step into direct communication with the divine. Today, we honor that bond and rediscover its forgotten meaning. From the beginning of human history, people have looked to the natural world for guidance, comfort, and meaning. The animals that shared the land, the sky, and the waters were never seen as random creatures existing apart from us. They were part of the same living story. In caves where early humans painted bison and horses, the walls became shrines, echoing with the belief that these animals carried strength, wisdom, and survival itself. The act of painting them was not decoration, but invocation. To paint the hunt was to call upon the spirit of the animal, asking for balance between taking life and giving respect. In ancient Egypt, animals stood at the very heart of sacred practice. The falcon was linked to the god Horus, a symbol of the sun and the eye that sees all. The cat, revered for its mystery and protective nature, became a companion to the goddess Bastet. To kill a cat, even by accident, was considered a crime against the divine order. These beings were not pets or possessions, but living extensions of godly energy. The crocodile, feared and respected, was honored through the god Sobek, whose presence reminded people of the dangerous, fertile waters of the Nile. Every animal was seen as a mirror of cosmic truth, revealing aspects of creation that humans could not embody alone. Among the native peoples of North America, animals were considered teachers and protectors. The bear carried the medicine of strength and introspection. The eagle soared between earth and sky, carrying prayers upward to the Creator. The wolf taught loyalty to the pack and the importance of balance between independence and community. To encounter an animal was often read as a sign, a message from the unseen world woven into the rhythm of daily life. Dreams of animals were not dismissed as fantasy, but honored as messages from guides beyond the veil. The same reverence is seen in the Vedic traditions of India, where animals carried deep spiritual symbolism. The cow was and still is considered sacred, a symbol of abundance and nurturing, embodying the eternal mother who gives without asking in return. The elephant was linked to the god Ganesha, remover of obstacles and bringer of wisdom. Serpents, often misunderstood in the modern world, were revered as powerful beings connected to transformation, protection, and hidden knowledge. Across all these traditions, one truth echoes. Animals were not simply observed, they were experienced as channels of the sacred. They carried qualities that human beings aspired to understand. To align with a sacred animal was to align with aspects of the cosmos itself. Whether through ritual, story, or vision, humans sought to embody the courage of the lion, the patience of the turtle, or the clarity of the hawk. These bonds reveal not only how deeply our ancestors honored the natural world, but also how they believed that spirit and matter, human and animal, were threads in one continuous tapestry of life. The origins of animal totems and sacred animal teachings reach into the oldest layers of human spirituality, when myth and ritual carried the wisdom of survival into the realm of the divine. In Africa, the cradle of humanity, early traditions gave each creature a spiritual essence, believing that the lion held not only the strength to hunt, but also the courage to protect. Stories passed through generations taught that animals were companions of the soul, not merely of the body. In these myths, every animal carried a role in teaching humanity how to live in harmony with the earth and with unseen forces. Among the Celts of ancient Europe, sacred animals were woven into the threads of daily life and the otherworld. The stag symbolized the untamed spirit of the forest, a guide leading seekers into deeper mysteries. The boar represented courage and ferocity in battle, and the salmon, revered for its wisdom, became a symbol of divine knowledge hidden in rivers and streams. To the Druids, animals were more than symbols. They were living embodiments of energy, thresholds into a world where the natural and the spiritual were inseparable. In Mesoamerican cultures, such as the Maya and the Aztec, sacred animals were central to cosmology. The jaguar was not just a predator, but a guardian of the underworld, moving between realms with silent power. The eagle represented the sun itself, rising from darkness each day, a messenger of celestial fire. Shamans often adopted animal forms in ritual trance, believing that transformation into a jaguar or an owl allowed them to cross the boundaries of human limitation and enter communion with spirits. These practices were not seen as symbolic role-playing, but as true crossings into other dimensions. In the indigenous traditions of Australia, the Dreamtime stories told of ancestral beings who took both human and animal forms, shaping the land and leaving spiritual imprints that endure in sacred sites. The kangaroo, the emu, the snake, and countless others became woven into the mythic story of creation, showing that animals were not separate but part of the same sacred ancestry as human beings. Each movement of the animal was understood as an echo of an original act of creation, binding the present world to timeless origins. The spiritual teachings of sacred animals also appear in ancient Chinese philosophy. The dragon, both feared and revered, symbolized cosmic power, balance, and transformation. The tiger was honored as a protector against evil spirits, embodying bravery and authority. The crane became a symbol of longevity and spiritual transcendence, soaring above human concerns into realms of clarity. These creatures were not imagined as fantasy, but as living expressions of energies woven into the universe. When we look across these cultures, we find a shared recognition. Animals were never considered random or lesser. They were bridges. They taught humans about cycles, courage, adaptability, and mystery. To walk with a sacred animal was to be guided into the deeper rhythms of the universe. These teachings were preserved not only in myth and ritual, but in the bones of culture itself, reminding us that the relationship between human and animal has always been a spiritual covenant as much as a physical one. The experiences that arise when humans encounter sacred animals often carry an energy that feels beyond ordinary explanation. In many traditions, people speak of sudden chills, visions, or powerful dreams that arrive when an animal appears at the right moment. These moments are remembered not as coincidence, but as signs of a deeper communication. For example, in the oral traditions of Native peoples, meeting a wolf on a solitary path might be understood as a reminder to trust one's instincts or to honor the strength of community. To modern eyes, it may seem symbolic, but to those who carried the teaching, the wolf itself was a messenger, embodying a truth that words alone could not capture. Accounts of ancient shamans describe entering altered states through drumming, fasting, or plant medicine, where they reported merging with animals. A healer might take on the wings of an eagle in a vision, describing the experience of flying above the land and seeing beyond human limitation. Another might feel the body of a jaguar, moving silently through jungle shadows, embodying strength and fearlessness. These journeys were not seen as imagination. They were lived experiences within the sacred landscape of the spirit world, carrying energetic evidence of transformation. In Egypt, priests often wore masks of animals during sacred ceremonies, not as costumes, but as vessels of channeling. To place the head of a falcon upon one's own was to invite the energy of Horus to enter, opening the eyes to clarity and divine perception. In Mesoamerican cultures, shamans adorned themselves with jaguar skins or owl feathers, believing these sacred items did not merely represent the animal, but carried its essence, allowing the human body to hold and express its power. Energetic truths also emerge in everyday encounters. Many cultures observed how animals appear at pivotal moments. A hawk circling overhead during a time of decision was often read as a sign of guidance. The sudden appearance of a snake crossing a traveler's path might warn of transformation or danger ahead. These subtle encounters left imprints of meaning, shaping choices and affirming the unseen connections between the human soul and the natural world. Even in the present day, people share experiences of being followed by recurring animal signs. Dreams of a bear, repeated sightings of a deer, or the unexplainable presence of a butterfly during grief often bring comfort and clarity. Science may dismiss these as coincidences, but within the realm of sacred knowledge, these moments are recognized as the spirit world speaking in a language older than words. Through these stories and practices, the evidence is not measured by instruments, but by the shift of energy within the human heart and mind. A dream that awakens courage, a vision that restores faith, or a sudden sign that brings peace in the midst of turmoil, all reveal how animals continue to act as bridges between the seen and the unseen. In this way, the presence of sacred animals and totems remains a living current of guidance, echoing the wisdom of those who first learned to listen. Across the world's cultures, animals appear again and again in myths, rituals, and sacred art, forming a pattern that suggests they are more than local symbols. They embody archetypes that seem to live deep within the human spirit, crossing boundaries of geography and time. The serpent, for example, appears in countless traditions. In ancient India, serpents were protectors of hidden treasures and guardians of wisdom. In Mesoamerican belief, the feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl was seen as a bringer of knowledge and culture. In the Garden of Eden story, the serpent became a force of temptation, linked to transformation and the awakening of awareness. Across these very different settings, the serpent carries a single echo. It is a creature of transition, power, and mystery. The bird, too, repeats as a sacred messenger. In Egypt, the falcon linked to Horus soared with divine sight. In Native North American teachings, the eagle was honored for carrying prayers to the heavens. In Norse myth, Odin's ravens, Hugin and Munin, flew across the world, gathering thought and memory to return to their master. These birds, though different in form and meaning, shared a universal quality. They connect the human to the sky, offering perspective beyond ordinary vision. The lion and the big cats reveal another archetype of courage, leadership, and fierce protection. Lions were symbols of divine guardianship in Mesopotamia, carved in stone at palace gates to ward off chaos. In African stories, the lion stands as the king of animals, embodying both nobility and strength. Among the Aztec, the jaguar became a symbol of warriors, stalking the underworld with unmatched power. These archetypes remind humans of their own potential to lead, to defend, and to embody strength with dignity. Even smaller creatures carry sacred archetypes. The spider, often feared, was revered in many cultures as the weaver of fate and destiny. In West African traditions, the trickster figure Anansi took the form of a spider, embodying both wisdom and cunning. The turtle, slow and enduring, symbolized the ancient rhythm of the earth. In native stories, the turtle carried the world upon its back, a reminder of stability and patience. These beings echo qualities that humans long to embody, qualities that can connect them to the cycles of creation and continuity. These repeating archetypes show us that sacred animals were not random choices of culture, but universal reflections of truths embedded in human consciousness. Carl Jung once suggested that archetypes live in the collective unconscious, and while his words came much later, ancient traditions already lived this reality. They knew that animals reflected the inner life of the soul as much as they embodied forces of the natural world. To dream of a snake, to encounter a deer, or to be visited by a crow was not just personal. It was part of a universal dialogue between humanity and spirit. The unbroken repetition of these sacred animals across cultures reveals something profound, that humans have always seen the divine mirrored in the animal kingdom. These archetypes bind humanity together, showing that long before written words or modern religion, the soul of humanity recognized animals as carriers of sacred truth. As the ancient relationship between humans and animals deepened, so too did the resistance against it. In many parts of the world, the reverence for animal spirits was slowly overshadowed by systems that sought to separate the sacred from the natural. With the rise of certain organized religions, animals were recast as mere creations meant to serve humanity, their deeper symbolism dismissed as superstition or idolatry. Sacred animal worship, once central to spiritual practice, was often branded as pagan, dangerous, or even demonic. What had been a living dialogue with the natural world became a silence imposed by fear and suppression. The serpent offers a clear example of this shift. In earlier traditions, it was a symbol of wisdom, healing, and rebirth. Yet in later interpretations, particularly in the Abrahamic faiths, the serpent became the villain of creation, forever tied to temptation and the fall of man. This reframing did not erase the ancient reverence, but it distorted the archetype, casting suspicion on a creature once honored as divine. In this way, an animal that represented transformation was reshaped into a warning against seeking hidden knowledge. Science, too, played its part in dismissing the mystical connection with animals. As the scientific revolution unfolded in the 17th century, animals came to be studied as biological specimens, classified and dissected. While this brought new understanding of anatomy and behavior, it also reduced creatures to mechanisms, stripping away the spiritual bond that had been honored for millennia. A hawk was no longer a messenger from the sky, but simply a predator with sharp vision. A bear ceased to be a healer and became only a mammal preparing for hibernation. This rationalist lens closed the doorway that once allowed humans to see animals as mirrors of divine qualities. Cultural trauma also played a role in this forgetting. Colonization disrupted indigenous traditions across the world, severing the rituals and ceremonies that had preserved animal totems. In North America, the suppression of native practices through law and violence attempted to erase the sacred relationships between humans and animals. In Australia, Dreamtime stories were silenced, and with them, the animal ancestors who shaped the land. These losses were not simply cultural. They fractured humanity's connection to the natural world, leaving wounds that are still felt today. Yet even within suppression, the memory of sacred animals survived. In folklore, in hidden symbols carved into churches, and in quiet practices passed through families, the reverence endured. Cats were still whispered about as guardians of unseen realms. Birds circling overhead were still read as omens. Even in times when fear and denial tried to erase the old ways, animals continued to appear, teaching their lessons in silence. The resistance to sacred animal wisdom reveals something deeper than misunderstanding. It reflects a fear of what cannot be controlled. To accept that a wolf carries spiritual guidance, or that a serpent embodies transformation, is to admit that humans are not the center of creation, but part of a larger mystery. For systems built on control, this was dangerous. For those who remembered, it was a truth worth preserving. When the barriers of suppression begin to loosen, a different perspective emerges, one that allows the possibility that animals are more than instinct and survival. In mystical traditions, the appearance of a sacred animal is not only symbolic, but can be understood as a form of soul remembrance. Some teachers describe that when a person dreams repeatedly of a certain animal, it may not simply be a sign, but a memory surfacing from another lifetime. A vision of soaring as an eagle could be more than imagination. It may be a fragment of the soul recalling its own freedom in a forgotten age. Many seekers have spoken of animal spirits appearing during moments of crisis or awakening, the presence of a deer during grief, the cry of an owl during a sleepless night, or the sudden flight of a hawk when a decision must be made. All have been described as reminders that the universe listens and responds. These encounters awaken awareness that life is not random, but infused with guidance. Such moments shift perspective from isolation to connection, from fear to a sense of belonging in a larger order. Expansive teachings suggest that animals may also embody multidimensional qualities. In shamanic visions, the jaguar is not only of this earth, but also a traveler of unseen realms. The dolphin is not simply a creature of the sea, but a carrier of vibrational medicine, moving between physical and energetic worlds. The horse, so often linked to freedom, is said to carry souls across boundaries of time and space, embodying movement between dimensions. These perspectives invite us to consider that the relationship with animals is not limited to the material, but extends into the spiritual architecture of the cosmos. Modern practices of vibrational healing and meditation also draw upon animal energies. Some practitioners invoke the rhythm of the bear's hibernation as a guide to deep rest and inner renewal. Others call upon the butterfly to remind them of the stages of transformation, honoring the passage from cocoon to wings. In energy work, animals are sometimes visualized as guardians of specific chakras, opening channels of awareness within the body. Whether through dream, vision, or meditative focus, the presence of animals continues to guide seekers toward higher states of consciousness. These awakening perspectives are not bound to one culture or belief system. They arise wherever humans are willing to listen. By honoring animals not just as creatures, but as companions of spirit, people awaken to the possibility that the world itself is alive with meaning. Every feather, every paw print, every shadow that crosses the path becomes part of a dialogue with the unseen. In this way, the sacred animal becomes not a relic of ancient belief, but a living reminder that human beings walk alongside teachers of fur, feather, and scale, who reveal truths that words alone can never hold. As humanity moved into an age of colonization, industrial growth, and relentless expansion, much of the intimate bond with sacred animals was severed. Ancient practices that honored animal spirits were branded as primitive, while societies built on conquest worked to erase them. When indigenous peoples were forced to abandon rituals, when shamans were silenced, and when sacred lands were taken, the spiritual ties between humans and the natural world were fractured. This was not only a cultural loss, but also a deliberate interruption of wisdom that had preserved balance between people and earth for thousands of years. The forgetting of animal totems served the interests of power. Empires built on domination benefited from breaking humanity's reverence for creatures that symbolized freedom, resilience, and hidden knowledge. To revere the eagle as a messenger of the divine was to see authority beyond the rule of kings. To honor the wolf as a teacher of loyalty was to understand strength rooted in community, rather than submission. To silence these traditions meant to control not only bodies, but also imaginations, stripping away the spiritual sovereignty that came from walking in harmony with animal guides. The Industrial Revolution pushed the rupture even further. As machines replaced rhythms of nature, animals were reduced to resources and labor. Horses, once honored as sacred companions, became engines for fields and war. Whales, revered in oceanic cultures as ancient beings of wisdom, were slaughtered for oil. The spiritual essence of animals, once acknowledged as divine, was overshadowed by the relentless demand for profit. The transformation of animals into commodities dulled humanity's capacity to recognize their sacred presence. Yet within the shadows of suppression, resistance survived. In hidden practices, whispers of sacred animals were carried forward. In dreams, visions, and folklore, people continued to encounter guides in animal form. Stories of black dogs at crossroads, white stags appearing in forests, or ravens circling before change endured across generations. These reminders suggested that, no matter how hard societies tried to silence the old ways, animals continued to reach into human lives with their presence. The forgetting of sacred animals also reveals a deeper interference, a force that benefits when humanity loses connection to its spiritual roots. When people no longer see animals as messengers, they are less likely to listen to the land, to honor cycles, or to feel part of a greater web of life. Disconnection breeds exploitation. Forgetting breeds dependence on systems of control. The memory of sacred animals threatened that control because it invited humans to see themselves as co-creators with nature, rather than servants of imposed authority. Reclaiming the forgotten power of animal totems is more than remembering myths. It is an act of spiritual restoration. When we honor the presence of an owl as a keeper of wisdom or the snake as a guide through transformation, we are not reviving superstition. We are reclaiming the truth that every creature is a reflection of spirit. This recognition strengthens the collective frequency, awakening humanity to a greater reality, one where we are not rulers over animals, but kin, walking together in the mystery of creation. To restore the wisdom of sacred animals is not only to remember stories, but to embody their teachings in daily life. This embodiment begins with presence. By observing an animal in its natural rhythm, whether it is a bird in flight or a cat moving with quiet grace, a person can mirror those qualities within themselves. The hawk reminds us to broaden our vision, to see beyond the immediate. The turtle teaches patience, showing that moving slowly can still lead us exactly where we are meant to be. The fox demonstrates adaptability, revealing that cleverness and awareness are as important as strength. Each encounter becomes a reflection, inviting us to awaken qualities of spirit within our own bodies and minds. Rituals also provide a way to call upon sacred animal wisdom. In many traditions, feathers, bones, or carved symbols were used not as trophies, but as vessels of connection. Today, one can create a simple ritual by placing an image of a chosen animal on an altar, lighting a candle, and setting an intention to invite its guidance. A person seeking courage might call upon the lion. Someone seeking clarity may meditate upon the owl. Another wishing to embrace transformation could focus on the butterfly. These acts are not about worship, but about alignment, drawing the energy of the animal into the heart as a teacher. Dream work is another path of activation. Keeping a journal beside the bed and recording dreams of animals can reveal hidden guidance. A recurring animal may signal a totem seeking recognition. The dream of a bear may point toward healing and solitude, while repeated visions of a deer may invite gentleness and awareness of subtle energies. By listening to these symbols, people begin to weave their inner lives with the archetypes that once guided their ancestors. Embodiment also extends into movement. Sacred dances inspired by animals were practiced by countless cultures. Even in a modern setting, simple mindful movements can channel their energy. Walking with the rhythm of a wolf pack, stretching with the intention of a cat, or breathing with the imagined wings of an eagle can shift awareness into harmony with the qualities they carry. These practices are not performances, but meditations in motion, helping the human spirit resonate with the natural world. Through these embodied acts, the relationship with sacred animals transforms from distant reverence into personal alignment. The wisdom of totems ceases to be locked in history and becomes alive in the body, breath, and spirit. By walking with awareness, creating rituals of intention, listening to dreams, and moving in harmony with animal archetypes, each person awakens the ancient truth that the divine speaks through every creature, and that by honoring them, we honor the sacred within ourselves. As we bring these reflections to a close, the presence of sacred animals invites us into a quiet reverence. They remind us that we are not separate from the living world, but participants in its vast and mysterious design. When a bird takes flight, when a deer steps into view, or when a serpent sheds its skin, each gesture reflects truths that our ancestors understood, and we are called to remember. Animals are not only physical beings, but also spiritual mirrors, revealing the strength, grace, patience, and transformation that exist within our own souls. To walk in harmony with sacred animals is to enter a dialogue with creation itself. It is to listen to the owl who speaks of wisdom in silence, to feel the power of the bear as we rest and heal, to recognize the butterfly as it carries the eternal teaching of renewal. These encounters are not bound by culture or time. They are universal, woven into the human heart, ready to awaken when we choose to notice. By honoring animals as totems, guides, and companions, we restore balance to a world that has too often forgotten the sacred. This restoration is not about looking backward with nostalgia. It is about moving forward with remembrance. To embody the wisdom of animals is to live with respect for life in all its forms, to see meaning in the smallest signs, and to recognize that divinity does not dwell only in temples or books, but in the living presence of the natural world. Each paw print, each feather, each scale tells a story that carries us deeper into the mystery of existence. As you move through your own journey, consider the animals that appear in your life. Notice their patterns, their rhythms, and their messages. Reflect on the qualities they awaken within you. When you hear the cry of a hawk, let it remind you to rise above confusion. When you see a turtle crossing a path, let it remind you to walk with patience. When a dog greets you with loyalty and joy, let it remind you of unconditional love. These are not random moments. They are sacred invitations to remember who we are in relation to the greater whole. Sacred animals have walked with humanity since the first stories were spoken around fires, since the first hunters painted visions on cave walls. They remain with us still, waiting for recognition. To honor them is to honor ourselves, and to honor the source that gave life to us all. Thanks for listening. This has been Ancient Spiritual Knowledge. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you'd like to support the show, gain access to bonus content, and unlock our entire library of podcasts, subscribe to the Forbidden Knowledge Network on Patreon. Subscribe now.